It happens every time I fall asleep on my back. I wake up and I can't tell if my eyes are open or shut, but I can see my whole room. A dark presence is lurking on top of my dresser. The darkness slithers like a snake down the side of my dresser, across the floor, and looms over the foot of my bed. It then creeps all over me, trying to invade every orifice. It pins me down, and it's pushing its way into my eyes, ears, and mouth. The darkness then screams a terrible screech into my face, and I try to scream back until eventually I manage to jerk my head and everything disappears, and I'm alone in the darkness. I couldn't move. My chest felt crushed. It was hard to breathe, and I could hear a loud hammering noise. A few feet away, a robed figure sat on my chair and slowly moved towards me. As it got closer, a menacing skull appeared. The only thing I could move was my eyes. She wears a black cloak and hood. Her face is like an evil witch, and evil generates from within her. Other times, I can be lying on my stomach, and she will creep her hand up the back of my head, down my face, and hook her fingers under my top teeth and jerk my head back. Other times, she will bite me. She sits on the bed, knocks on the door, calls my name, and generally terrifies me. I have only experienced sleep paralysis twice in my life. The first time occurred when I was a freshman in college. I woke up to a girl sitting on the edge of my bed. I could feel the mattress give way to her body as she sat there motionless. She slowly lifted her head. Her eyes were solid white, and she had a large gash in her left cheek. She just sat there and stared. By the time I was fully awake, she was gone. I usually see someone come into my room with a crazed grin, staring at me. I try to scream, but I can't. They lean over and start suffocating me. It's a sense of overwhelming helplessness. The whole time, I'm just repeating to myself, "Wake up, wake up, wake up." I experienced my first sleep paralysis episode about a year ago. Every morning, my alarm goes off at 7 a.m. The morning of my first episode, I heard my alarm going off in the background. I opened my eyes and started to roll over to shut it off, when I suddenly realized I was totally paralyzed. I started to hear a slight ringing in my ears. It suddenly felt like I was sinking into the bed. Suddenly, I felt a presence sitting in the chair to the left of my bed. I could only see the figure out of the corner of my eye, but what I was able to see absolutely terrified me. Sitting on the edge of a chair was an elf-looking creature. It had on a small pointy hat with a ball on the top. It was wearing white and red striped stockings, almost like a leprechaun. The entity's feet were hanging off at the edge of the chair, and I observed him playfully kicking his feet back and forth. Suddenly I heard the entity leap off the chair with a thud. Still unable to move, I could hear the little bells ringing on his hat as he walked around the edge of the bed. As he came around the corner of the bed, I could see that this leprechaun-like creature had rows of sharp, jagged teeth and a menacing grin. His eyes were pitch black. All of a sudden, the creature disappeared into a black cloud of smoke, and I was finally able to move. I bolted out of my bed as quickly as I could and ran straight into the bathroom. I was scared to go to sleep after that. I have had a few episodes of sleep paralysis since that night. Sometimes, I can still hear the bells ringing or see a pointy hat at the foot of my bed in the middle of a sleep paralysis episode. The first time I can remember having sleep paralysis was in 2012. I was 17 and stayed over at my friend's house most weekends. I'd never heard of sleep paralysis before, so when I woke up, completely unable to move or speak, I was terrified and I'd assumed I'd had a stroke or suddenly developed lock-in syndrome. What if I'm like this for the rest of my life? I thought. I could hear my friend, already awake and eating, but couldn't shout out for help. As soon as I woke up, I went on Google and found out what it was. Sleep paralysis. Considering I was regularly going 24 hours without sleep and having to nap in the day, it's no surprise that it happened, and I started to get used to it and learn to relax until it was over. In 2014, when I was in my first year at uni, I was prescribed SSRI antidepressants. They messed up my sleep schedule very badly, and the sleep paralysis came back, but this time a lot worse than it was before. It was the same as before, except I also felt as though I was being crushed and could hear a very loud static-like noise inside my head. I was terrified to fall back asleep because it kept happening over and over again whenever my head hit the pillow. I also experienced strange feelings of someone being in the room, although I didn't see anybody. On one occasion, I woke up to my friend almost in tears and terrified because I had sat up with my eyes open, talking to someone he couldn't see. And another night, another friend who asked me, "Who are you talking to?" I replied, "That man." After I finished university in 2016, I started sleeping much better. Although I still had the sleep paralysis, it was more like the first time I had it, without the crushing and the noise, so it was much less scary, and became a normal part of falling asleep and waking up. In 2017, I started taking an SNRI antidepressant, which also can have sleep disturbances. Even after I stopped taking it, my sleep paralysis was getting more intense and frightening, and now I'm unsure if it could possibly get worse. For 2 years now, I've been having it a few times a week, sometimes multiple times a night. I've had hallucinations where I felt my neck be completely crushed into the pillow, been pushed off the bed and onto the floor, fallen through the floor into the room below. Obviously, whilst remaining completely still and unharmed. I've heard my own voice, and also voices I don't recognize, whispering, talking, and shouting things I don't understand. I've heard loud static-like noises, bangs, and distorted sounds coming from inside my head. The worst thing I've experienced is visits from the Hat Man. He absolutely terrifies me, and there's nothing I wouldn't do to get rid of him forever. I went to bed tonight at 11:30 p.m., and by 1 a.m., I was wide awake after having a very scary episode. I wonder if anyone else has experienced this and had it stop. Will I always be experiencing this? I was once a staff member at a Cub Scout summer camp, and the staff stayed in one large cabin. There were 2 rooms with about 8 bunk beds with a bathroom in between. I had a top bunk in the center of the left wall. One night there, I had an episode of sleep paralysis, and it was terrifying. I've had episodes before, but none have stuck with me like this one did. My eyes opened, and I could not move at all. I kept trying to get up, but was unable to, and I never realized what was happening until I woke up the next day. I could only move my eyes around the room. I tried to speak and couldn't utter a single word. The room became black, and a white and giant figure appeared in the corner of the room. He was sort of like Ryuk from Death Note, but not exactly. I knew he wanted to kill me. I tried so hard to scream, but couldn't. He left the corner and walked past the foot of my bed, staring at me the whole time with a creepy half smile on his face. He went over to the closet and opened the door. He backed into the closet without ever breaking eye contact with me, and he closed the door. I swear, it felt like days of agonizing panic looking at the closet door, not being able to move or speak, and seeing all my staff friends sound asleep. I was really freaked out the next morning, and was honestly scared to sleep the next night. I have only had sleep paralysis one time since then, but that was definitely the worst. I have a very specific sleep paralysis demon that sits on my chest at around 5:30 a.m. constantly. She doesn't weigh much, but I can't move, or it will upset her. Usually, she just sits for a while making a deep, idling noise and vibrating. If I move, it makes a pitiful noise as though it were being harmed. Sometimes it digs its demonic claws into my chest and seems to care not for my discomfort. Eventually, it becomes bored and leaves. I have had sleep paralysis for as long as I can remember. When it first started happening, I would hear my mom calling my name from the hallway. Then I would hear footsteps walking up to my door. The door would open, and I would see my mom standing in the doorway, smiling at me with her head cocked to one side. She would just stand there until I would fully wake myself up. She never said anything. She just stared at me. I get sleep paralysis when I've had too much sleep. The only time I was really freaked out by sleep paralysis was when I could hear chatter in the background, and then I felt somebody lay next to me. I could feel the quilt moving with each breath this entity took. I started to panic as I knew that I was the only person in the house that night. Eventually I woke up and moved to the side and nobody was there. It took me a while to get back to sleep that night. I get sleep paralysis every now and again, but these days I know how to manage it better. The absolute worst experience was when I was staying in a hotel with my boyfriend at the time. I remember trying to scream and move, anything to get his attention, but nothing worked. I couldn't even get out a sound. It was absolutely terrifying. And then I finally woke up, incredibly shaken, but glad it wasn't real. Honestly, that's been one of the scariest situations in my life. The first time it happened to me was when I went for a nap during the day. I was laying on my side, facing away from my door, when I woke up to the sound of my door closing. I tried to turn around to see who had come into my room, but I couldn't move. My eyes were wide with terror. I could see everything in my room. I heard this thing walk around my room. Then it sat on my bed, and I could feel the bed dip from its weight. It then shuffled towards me, and it felt like it began to spoon me. It was extremely tall. I was trying to move so hard, but I was just lying still. The thing started breathing on my neck and tickling my back. It then stood up and left after a few minutes. This was the most terrifying thing that has ever happened to me. I started experiencing sleep paralysis during the exam period of my first year at university, which was a very stressful time for me. The first time it happened, I woke up with the feeling that I was being suffocated. My bed was literally swallowing me up. The more I panicked, and the faster my pulse and breathing became, the quicker I was disappearing into my bed. I couldn't move a muscle, and my attempts to scream fell silent. After I had calmed myself down, I kind of drifted out of my paralyzed state and woke up completely. The second time it happened, I woke up to a very tall man standing by my door, holding something behind his back and moving towards me very slowly. Once again, I couldn't move and couldn't make a sound. It was definitely one of the most terrifying experiences I've ever had. I was lying on my couch, having just fallen into a nap. I hadn't had sleep paralysis, lucid dreaming, or astral projection in a while, so I wasn't expecting it. I woke up to a man, dressed in all black with a jester mask on, crouched on my bathroom sink. You can see our bathroom from our couch. We have a one-bedroom apartment. I tried waking up, which is blinking a lot, but to no avail. Then I tried looking for my phone to call my husband. All the while, this jester was crouched on the sink. Every time I found my phone, it wouldn't work. I then felt like I was walking towards the back door. I got to the balcony when I suddenly felt a force pulling me back to the couch. I then heard a whisper right in my ear. "Wrong move. Wrong move." Then I was back on our couch and couldn't move. I tried yelling for my husband and waking up, but nothing came out of my mouth and I could not move. So I remembered, a while back during a lucid dream, these very creepy beings were all up in my face and I got scared, but then I started laughing and they backed up. So I just started forcing a laugh, and the jester just started laughing and pointing back at me. Whenever I stopped, he appeared to stand up and start walking towards me, so I just kept fake laughing as loud as I could. Then at one point, I felt strength to get up and try to run out the back door again. I frantically called out my dog's name, and she was right by my side. And then all of a sudden, the jester starts calling her to him. He started making those clicking noises you make so your dog comes to you, and he starts calling her by her name. That's when I went into full-blown panic, and I picked her up, and I was holding her trying to open the door, and he comes up and whispers in my ear,
"I've never called a dog before."
And then I was back on my couch and desperately trying to wake up. Crawling out of my skin, I was finally able to keep my eyes open long enough to see my apartment with no jester in it. I looked down towards my feet, and my dog was fast asleep, snoozing away. Hey everyone, I just discovered this sub to my excitement and wanted to share a few sleep paralysis strange dream experiences I had. These instances occurred months and even years apart, but 100% awake, and it was real. Here's a few that I remember. Instance 1. 2 years ago, I woke up in my bed and my head was spinning. I didn't feel good, so I tried to get out of bed only to realize I couldn't even walk. I called out for my parents and started to crawl towards their bedroom. I screamed and cried, but they were still just laying there fast asleep as if they couldn't even hear me. I crawled back to my bedroom and saw that someone was laying in my bed. I shook her and turned her over, only to see that that person was me. My body was lying there limp and lifeless. I woke up only for the same sequence to occur 7 more times. I was trapped in a cycle of the same dream. Instance 2. A few months later, I woke up in my bed and an overwhelming feeling of dread and horror engulfed me. I couldn't move and there was a black figure standing at the end of my bed. I tried to scream, but only small shrieks would come out. I tried my best to scream for my mom, and to come storm into the room and to tell me that everything was okay. After reciting prayers from the Quran, the feeling of dread started to disappear, and so did the figure. I could finally get out of bed, and as I opened my bedroom door, my mom was standing right outside. She had this smile on her face that gave my heart some peace for the moment, until I realized that I couldn't understand what she was saying, and her smile became menacing. It hit me that this was not my real mother, and I was standing face to face with an entity disguising as my mom. Thankfully, I woke up immediately after this. Instance 3. A few months ago, I awoke to a cold, soft hand lovingly and gently touching my neck. It felt exactly like my mother's hand when she used to massage Vicks cream on my neck and chest as a kid, whenever I was sick. Again, I was so tired that it didn't freak me out. It felt familiar. As I opened my eyes, the hand wasn't connected to a body. I immediately woke up in reality. This may not be sleep paralysis, but it was definitely terrifying. Instance number 4. I woke up 1 month ago to my cousin, who lives in Michigan, which is a 4-hour drive, trying to strangle me. I struggled and tried to get her hands off of me. She had the most horrific, smiley look on her face, and I realized it actually wasn't her at all. I woke up right after that. In reality, my cousin and I are super close, and she would never hurt me, just an FYI. I hope you enjoy reading some of my personal experiences on this topic. What do you think of the family instances? Anyone have any psychological explanation of dreams or experiences like this? I had my first sleep paralysis event, and I wanted to share it with you guys. This happened at 2:40 a.m. yesterday. It was probably one of the scariest / coolest things that's ever happened to me. Right before it started, I was thinking about this old, creepy piano melody. I could only remember the beginning, so I tried to imagine what the rest would sound like when all of a sudden, I was only hearing distorted piano that wouldn't stop playing. While my eyes were still closed, I heard a deep, feminine scream, which I heard throughout the whole sleep paralysis. Confused about what was going on, I opened my eyes, only to realize I couldn't move. Then I realized I was having sleep paralysis. Suddenly, the right side of my body and the left side of my body started jittering / shaking, and I started to hear wind blowing violently. I looked around my room to find somewhat tall black figures in black cloaks starting to surround my bed and staring at me. Keep in mind the scream and the piano music had not stopped. I then tried to move anything, and when I couldn't, I tried to scream "Mom," but I was only able to whisper it. I then started trying to move my thumb, and I started to wiggle it. Soon I was up, and my paralysis had ended. I don't know how to really feel about this experience, even though the sleep paralysis was scary. When it all ended, I wasn't really scared at all. I kind of want to experience it again and see what happens, since the sleep paralysis was more cool than scary for me. It also feels kind of cool too, since I've been trying to lucid dream for about 3 weeks, and I've had no luck since, which makes the sleep paralysis special, since it's a different experience, I guess. Let me know if I should try to do it again, or not, if that's even possible. Anyways, thanks for reading, and let me know what you guys and girls think.